Something is obviously out. Something is obviously up and out. Like, I'm not trying to chase anything. But obviously today I was able to recognize some big change. Like a real big change. I noticed it. I mean, recognizing the changes around here. It's always very interesting. You know? I mean, if I'm just playing it how I've been playing it, where it's like obviously the relative aspect of change itself is held with some ability to obviously reduce yourself. To some degree of I guess recognizing that something else exists. Basically, like if you can come to some conclusion of that, because I really think it's funny that if you look at what you perceive to be a huge portion of what I've experienced to be this life, the funny thing is that without even being told, most of that is focused inward on the self anyways. It's already a focus of on the self. And the thing is that when the focus is really directed on the self has a lot of obstacle or problem with dealing with instant change. Probably because it's the most acceptable form of competition there is. Talking like dollars and cents, basically. But when you've reduced the world, when the idea of money has come to this place where the work has to be something that equates with the ideas of recognizing something. The changes to this idea of there being like unknown parts of whatever it is that you recognize. If I just had to like take a stab at it in the dark here. And the world has a lot of different ways of dealing with this. I mean, if you're in, you know, a brick house or whatever, it's not usually the characters, but it's the topics that do this. You know, and you can sit there and say, alright, well, is there ever like an end-all topic? Right? But the thing is that almost when you recognize somebody, it's like that every day. It's like that notion of people. All these people have so many broad abilities. That there's almost really no other way other than to just accept everything for what it is. But obviously, you know, with some sense of continuity or there being the ability for these things to end, you know, because the funny thing is, you could say, is it fear or is it always just excitement for possibility? And the thing is that possibility is usually associated with, I think, the idea of losing everything. While recognizing that one thing. Is it yourself still, or is it something else? Because, you know, it's very difficult to be a thing or anything in this world because you're obviously, everything's connected, and so at some point in time, as soon as anything's recognized, it's either taking from or giving to certain aspects, and so not being able to perhaps recognize the ability for yourself to change is also sort of coming up against these ideas of things in this world having, you know, the ability to be multiplied or whatever. So, I don't know, once you come to that place where it's about recognition and it's about, you know, the idea of order and not necessarily so much competition. You know, is like, that's still like an ideal, because I can just say from my situation, guess what? Like, I'm giving you guys like ideals for like your situations of if these characters have these ability of change, but then I would probably think that there is still some like greater focus or something in your like realities that is probably some form of constant of some sort. But for me, it's still almost all the same. I mean, it's just like, as I've been saying, like obviously something got let loose. Like it's like it's like the idea of just the body like burning up into ash or something like that. You know, is that a part of something? I mean, we can just say like we'll describe obviously the ends of things here, and then you know time will time will tell, right? I mean, I might as well right now while I'm doing this before that leaves my brain, just share this over this channel one more time, just to kind of show everybody that. I mean, and then I'm just gonna splice a bunch of things. Obviously I say this all the time. Come on. So much for what? I mean, should I post my video of me going to the store the other day, a while back? off of that as well, I mean, just to counteract like me and my sitting here like going through things, it's just like, you know, is it just death? Is it just death? I'm just too smart for ignorance. Bah ha ha ha! Time will afford this one. Right? Like, saying the idea allows for all variations of what has been said to come to fruition. Like, time is actually just air, or space time. Weird. Just to kind of like recognize like what this like self dialogue does, where it basically comes from the idea of space, and then it goes to like this idea of sort of localization into there being some form of like condescension of all things, which is actually the ability for you to sort of reduce everything. And now it almost feels like, all right, well, there's still more air. There's still more air out there because, like, why? You know, these people, like, why? It's obviously, you know, I can do my best to reroute the whole situation of there being any attention to any being at all as to there being uh, your ability to, you know, prove yourself. But see, then the funny thing is if I can actually accentuate that to an extent of where proving myself obviously has to relate to there being any ability for anyone to pay attention to a being of any kind, then the more that I can do that, then actually there are ways to convince yourself. And if you can do that enough, then who's to say that you can't actually place whole barriers and fields of ignorance around you all over the place? Just to, you know, keep your speed up. Just keep your speed up. Hey, this one's still on there. Like, obviously, I need to convince myself of a few things, but I don't know how else, like, to try to, like, make that, like, a reality other than just by doing this, like, continually, you know? If it's death all the same, then I say it all the time. See, now, even in this conversation, there's a better moment that I could have said that. Of just like me saying, who is everybody? Yeah, I say it all the time. So, you know, and I say it all the time, like, that this situation is like, you know, whatever the situation is, like why I do all that is, especially probably really helpful on like a day like today was just like what in the world. I mean, there are definitely like I can give you specific examples of like worse days for sure. Where it's like, you know, maybe it's just like so much the idea of like is everything in the store or something like that because like are we waking up into like some sort of continual awakening or something, and that's all it's all fine because as far as I'm aware of whatever I'm doing I do it all the time. But yeah, then when it is like a day like today, then it's like, all right, is something really going to say like, oh, this is something, because if they look into anything, then guess what, I'm probably going to change. If you look into anything, I'm probably going to change, which is going to redirect back to this whole conversation here, back to where I just said, you know, what are we really dealing with? Some idea of like topics and the characters are all the same, or are we like all focused on a topic and the characters themselves have some broad like range kind of thing. And You know, sitting here like what I can say, like I could say a bunch of things. I could sit here and say a bunch of things. What, we're gonna be really real? Who knows if I'm making any of this up anyways? But I can say this, that according to a lot of things, nobody looks into anything that I do or the things that I've tried to do. So I would probably just say like me personally anyways, if I'm like actually getting into that whole situation and scenario. See, there's obviously a point right there. Just to let everybody know. Obvious. Obvious point. And, you know, okay, well, disregarding that or whatever, it's obviously pretty slow here right now. You know, this is pretty slow. Like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody just, I don't know, did some sort of like tampering with the environment or something, basically. But to me, it's, you know what I mean? Like, and if anybody's familiar with any of this stuff, and I just gotta say that, I just have to say that, especially if it's for myself, I have to say that. I have to say things like that, okay? Then it's like, that's not, guys, we're not even there yet. You know what I mean? Like, we're really not even there, you know? Yeah, talking about, okay, well, then if anybody looks into this, then it's just gonna, it'll just blow everything up. But, you know, considering myself, I've been doing this for how long? And I, you know what? I really can. I'm just like, what? It's been like, you know, how many people have I even interacted with on the internet? I can probably tell you, I can probably actually really tell you like a legitimate number on that one. You know what I mean? Like, how many people have I had like legitimate conversations with throughout all this stuff? Like, over how many years? Not including whatever this is. Just like even before this, just forums. You know, um, eh, just very like obscure websites of forums and um, just you know, very like unorthodox environments and you know, anything like that. Like the interaction, like realistically, if you're on stuff like this, is like, guess what? Like this is over, you know, I don't know. I'm sorry to like, if anybody ever, you know, whatever, but I mean, somewhere over around like, we can give you guys like something even not that ridiculous for me. Just like, I don't know, somewhere around like 7,000 days or something like that. You want to know how many like actual legitimate conversations with people that I've like really had over the internet? For like 7,000 days. $168,000 give or take. Obviously less than that even. I did this whole practice thing with some video series I was doing, but I mean, really guys, it's got to be like not even like 100 people, you know. That's just the reality. That's just the reality. Is just like it's got to be like not even like 100 people. Like 100,000 hours. That's a ratio for you. And that's like covering everything. But, obviously all that I was going to say was, yeah, anyways, I'm just telling you guys like, you know, that's like a real thing. Like probably not even that many people, like 100,000 hours. And that's stuff, guys, that's like way before all like whatever before paralleled to like, you know, to so many different tracks and environments, you know, that it's just like just got to say it. So it's like obviously doing any of this is completely for, you got to be able to relate all this somehow to everything I just said about being able to convince yourself of some things. Because if you can't do that, and if there's some guy out there who believes all this stuff without being able to scale all this stuff down like I just did, like, should put a hat on or something. Just saying. Say it all the time. Um, yeah, I mean, well, I could sit here anyways and tell you guys of all this change, or like really dramatic changes, but like what's to say that you guys are gonna believe me anyways? Other than the fact that it's like mass to an extent has some sort of like undeniable thing, except for fear. Probably the biggest way around mass, if anybody really wants to know, is probably just fear, because that's either a way through it or it's a way to get away from it. If there's like any sense of realness to this world at all, then it's like obviously you can sort of be pushed, if you can do this, what I'm saying, and convince yourself. Yeah, I could tell everybody, oh yeah, today's been a day or whatever, and obviously it's like taking some weird, you know, kind of something, but I mean, I'm in a place that like all these barriers and stuff like that. I put all that stuff up every day, anyways. And all of it's pretty focused. All of it's pretty focused and fine tuned, and um, whatever. But yeah, like I was saying, like tell everybody of a lot of things. But anyways, anyone looks that up, then I'm probably gonna not deal with whatever that changes because I know of a lot of things. I know a lot of things. Okay. So if I'm being reduced to some sort of character, then I'm just letting you know. You should really look into it. You should really look into it for me. Should really do it. How can I catch that? I've been doing this all day anyways. For this and according to a lot of things, nobody looks into anything that I do or the things that I've tried to do. So I would probably just say like me personally, anyways. I'm like actually getting into that whole situation and scenario. See, there's obviously a point right there. Just let everybody know. Are you really dealing with some idea of like topics and the characters are all the same, or are we like all focus on a topic and the characters themselves have some broad like range kind of thing? And you know, sitting here like what I can say like I could say a bunch of things. I could sit here and say a bunch of things. What, we're gonna be really real? Who knows if I'm making any of this up anyways? But I can say this that according to a lot of things, nobody looks into anything that I do or the things that I've tried to do. So I would probably just say like me personally anyways, if I'm like actually getting into that whole situation and scenario. See, there's obviously a point right there. So slow. I don't know how else like to try to like make that like this situation is like you know whatever the situation is, like why I why I do all that. Especially probably really helpful on like a day like today was just like what world. I mean, there are worse. There are definitely like I can give you specific examples of like worse days for sure. Where it's like you know maybe it's just like so much the idea of like some sort of continual awakening or something. But yeah, then when it is like a day like today, then it's like, all right, is something really gonna say like, oh, this is like, I'm probably gonna change. If you look into anything, I'm probably gonna change, which is gonna redirect back to this whole conversation here, back to where I just said, you know, what are we really dealing with? Some idea of like topics and the characters are all the same, or are we like all focused on a topic and the characters themselves have some broad like range kind of thing? Sitting here like I like what I can say like I could say a bunch of things. I could sit here and say a bunch of things. What, we're gonna be really real? Who knows? I guess probably the point there is just that well there's like 2,000 videos here now. I sort of just went onto it, just like yeah, like 2,000 videos. It actually shows it better on this than on there. It's like being in debate and just like waking up in the shower. Is there some better way to view this? Are we getting to the point where it's like basically all this is gonna become like some Excel like kind of chart or something like that? Like, listen, guys, obviously I'm doing like views, like and stuff like that. Come on, like I just am looking at how much stuff I've done. Like, is that what this is going to amount as? Is like, so anyways, it's all I'm saying is this point. The point there was me explaining that, but then obviously, and like saying like I can make up anything, but then saying that yeah, but nobody has basically ever looked into any of this stuff, like according to what I'm seeing, unless I use weird arguments like this. Okay, like that's the point there. Because how else is somebody supposed to have anything and like navigate this world? It's just like the idea of like accruing like body weight. Okay, there's the obvious point. All right, but it's like the idea of like accruing all this body weight and mass for like to be able to do things and whatever else. But it's like at some point in time, it's just like, how many like how many heads does like the monster have or something like that, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know I'm pretty like I say it all the time. Everyone's basically doing what they've always done, guys. You should just watch out for that one guy who is awkward. Everybody's basically doing what they've always done. Just watch out for the one guy who is fucking awkward, all right? Because I mean, what is all this really? Like, I'm just trying to look at like because that's what this is like more than anything. I just related all this to like from money to character, basically. Okay, like from the fake world to the real world, and like back to the fake world again. Like, which one is more real? The fact that it's like money, or is that like the idea of just motion? You know, and it's like if motion is actually true, then is it just always go to the same place? But I'm just trying to, because of all that, like, that's cool. You know, maybe I don't know, maybe I could do, just show this over here, whatever. Let me get some good charts on. I'm just like browsing around all my stuff though. But since that's the case, I'm literally just looking at like basic, straight up like basic numbers. Earn it. What do you guys think I've been doing in all the things that I've been making? Earn it. Earnings. What do you guys think I've been doing like with all this physical stuff? Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, if you're listening to this and you're not me, at this point, I'm probably gonna stay away from you. I'm just saying. I already said all the stuff that probably related to like the idea of like people being able to like obviously deal with this change or whatever, you know. But then but at this point in time, now I have to keep going for myself. And guess what? Like, if you're still listening to this, like I got a problem probably. Because I mean of what I've just said, so I'm probably gonna stay away from you. Like I'll just post my one thing of like literally talking myself down from like moving out of like any other emotion rather than just rationale. And that's probably, you know what I mean, like I might make something to like literally just like totally tune out whatever that is. Don't know if there's any form of like statement that I should include with that that basically acknowledges something either like not being considered or like some form of like flaw of my own character, but maybe saying that is just enough. You know what I mean? Because if it's that big of a flaw, like, you know, do I really have to say it? Would I even be able to say it? So, you know, if there's anyone out there that really knows a better way of this, like, existence at this point in time for me, like, man, guess what? You really probably, like, you probably are a statue of gold. You probably are a statue of gold that can't say it. You really can't say it. You are somewhere out there, somewhere out there in this world. I mean, there's a statue of gold out there, big one, a big statue of gold somewhere. Maybe all gold stone. Hey, you know what I mean? And it's like a void. It's like a golden void. You know what I mean? A golden dream. It's out there, silent. Who is everyone? I say it all the time. Man, this definitely this feeling. Yeah, yeah. Like that is, man. Like pick a side. Seriously, pick a side because like not picking a side is not your thing. I'll say this, like there's, you know what I mean? Like who even knows, but whatever that is, like whatever this feeling is, like not picking a side, that is not your thing. You know what I mean? Like if I just had to say that, like not picking a side, don't do it. Like either that or you need to stop saying the words picking and side for now. If I had to sort of try and grab hold of something there. Really? Come on, it's like 2K. Is there no like see that like I don't even know if I'm like what am I like pushing some boundary of something? I'm obviously up to the conversation now. Like the fact is it's like how much space inside of whatever this shell is to where I'm actually connecting with these devices is sort of like I'm actually projecting an echo that is that is traveling from me right now to get to this place, because usually it's just like right here. Obviously the conversation is there, but I mean this is like some very very like, you know, echoey echo chamber kind of uh thing of like, you know, connecting through something, connecting through something, connecting through something to, you know, advance on this in some way. It's just like it's a combination of things. Normally, I wouldn't even probably project any of this because, like I said, it's like I experience a lot of like, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, well that, you know what I mean? Statistically, just like the tilt of the Earth and you know, the uh, like you guys hear how ridiculous that sounds though? Like I did reduce the whole idea of news to just the news. You wanna know what the news really is? It is a game show. The news is a game show, but ultimately everything in life will come down in the end of just like the stage. Unless you can do this, it will always go to the place where it's just like, did you or did you not? You know what I mean? Like, did you or did you not? What are you gonna do in that instance? But I mean, yeah, like, well, there's like a wind that came over from because of the, you know what I mean, the whatever coming up out of the whatever over here, and uh, like you might as well say like, where's the ball? Hey, where's the ball at? You know, like as you're sitting there watching, like, okay, yeah, well, this obviously, blah, 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 you know. I mean, see, but the problem with that, the problem with like not including my conversation inside of that, and the thing is like that conversation doesn't have to be in those places where it's like everyone else feels comfortable with this, with whatever else this, you know what I mean, whatever this stuff is. But I mean the problem with not including my conversation in there, of relating this to like the self and relating this to character and relating it to assets and finances and the ability to you know, exchange universalities, you know, is that then you are basically, you are saying that everything goes to the same place. Uh, really. Um, that just has to deal with the fact that when you're talking about time like that, and then you're saying that all time is this thing that is basically static, you know. Is that complicated, guys? I'm sorry. Is that complicated for me to say that something is static? Oh man, how much? Just how much? You know? Like that, you know, like that idea that time is static right there, without saying that there's like the ability for things to perhaps move through time. You're actually taking away this the static nature of time, you know. Um Realistically, if you think about it, just, you know, everything has an aspect like that. So when you're sitting there and you're like trying to say that, you're obviously, you're not including some form of dialogue that is very key to not recognizing that saying it like that is like cut to the chase. You know what I mean? Like cut to the point. Like if you're saying that everything is on the same time, then like why are you talking about this? Like you have everyone's attention. Like like time at that point in time will directly translate to emotion almost. And see that's why I say like okay, well then see then why can't you take it one step further? Like just let me do it. Just let me do it. Because then you can just say okay, well then if we've just gone to the place where then time is now has an emotional factor to it. All right. And see all of these words, all of these words are going to get to some place where you can introduce other key components of the nature of life into them. And so as soon as time has this aspect of emotion to it, then the static nature of time allows things to basically um, navigate through that. But see, then we'll just talk about we'll say, you really want me to make this actually something that is doable? Like, I'll tell you the obvious problems with it. Just like there, you know what I mean? Like, I'll tell you the obvious problems. The obvious problems is that all of a sudden, now to allow time travel, we've included emotion into this whole equation, which emotion is the key component to time travel because that allows you to have the idea of consideration for a static time. If there is something that basically time is, then obviously time is going to make decisions or has the ability to do these things and whatever kind of whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you know, as as physics allows. All right, as the fire allows. Um, that's like, what emotion then are we talking about then? Because we've included emotion, so you always have to take it one step further. Now the reality of it is, and then here's the limitation, is that it's innocence probably that does that. You're dealing with innocence. And innocence itself that is able to, and this whole idea of consideration, I've had this conversation a few times. There's a lot of stuff that I still don't even record. I have conversations all the time outside of everything. I don't record a lot of stuff. I have conversations with people. I do a lot of things. I don't take pictures of a lot of things. I write a lot of stuff. I go out and send out a lot of stuff. I go all over the place and do tons of stuff and don't record a lot of stuff and don't write down a lot of stuff. I have lots of different ways. It's just like, all right, I'm not going to write this over here. I'm going to go and do this over here. I'm going to go and put this over here. I'm going to go today I'm gonna put this in here, and today I'm gonna do this today. I didn't do any of that today. I've been doing that for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then like, okay, now it's been like a week. I didn't even do it I didn't even go and sign on to this and go on to here for a long time. Okay. Uh, but anyways, one of the biggest conversations is consideration that I've been having, where it's like, okay, if life just comes to these types of terms, then it has to do with the idea that anyways, it's like it's kind of funny because I can sit and tell you exactly specific things. I'm just like, all right, well, it's like Well, we have hate, and we have the self, and we have love, and we have nothing. But you know what I mean? There was obviously an exact way to just create the idea of like, um, that idea of consideration and these things like have the ability to make decisions and say something to the extent of why, you know. And see, this is something that's so complicated that it's like unless you're absolutely probably like on board with like me 100% anyways, it would just be like, what? You know what I mean? Like you just take it all in probably or something, and if not, so it's like so funny the condescension of like these ideas because what? Can I get better or worse at this? You know? Can I really get better or worse at like being able to elaborate on these ideas when it's like, man, these things are so complicated and it's like this is literally taking me like, you know, however long this is, like since all this stuff now is like it's an hour and like 20 minutes. It's taking me like an hour and 20 minutes to like go down this path. That's kind of there's a sense of humor, okay? But it's like I just say that because humor could almost be like some dissension of time or like awakening of these things. Because it's like what? Like from the place of like where I'm able to even express these ideas anyways to the place where it's like I could be better or worse at these to the place of where it's like I have no ability to express anything, you know? Other than like, man, from this place I could probably look at anything that would be like that and just be like that is like the oddest thing you'd ever see in your life, something that is like expressing nothing, you know? This is very difficult right here, and whatever this airspace is, this is a total curveball. Maybe the consideration is just that you really is it like you really can't do anything, you know? Is that actually what consideration is? I mean, I could say what consideration is if I'm consider enough things. I can say like consider maybe consideration is that you can't actually do nothing or that you can't do anything. See right there, I just played off of consideration because then it allows for whatever. There are better ways to do that. There are way better ways to say that. There are way better ways to lead up to these ideas of like the basic, components of life and then say that if that's all that it is, then you say something like, okay, well, and the word that other people were using was nuance. But see, you can know all the words even. You can know all the words, but it's like the ability to say something, smart is almost just like the ability to you know, like go there with it. Because I can say nuance, you know, I can say it, but still doesn't obviously do like like the ability for it to take the ideas of these aspects of living into their being. I don't know. Is there some word that everybody wants me to say? you know? Is there some word that I don't want to say? Is there something that's too easy? Or is it actually really hard? Because, I don't know. Maybe it's better if I'm considering all this other stuff. Maybe it's better than me. I don't know. But what if, like, is it or whatever? Like, maybe we go back to that golden statue I was talking about. What if there really is a word that you're all thinking about that I know you're thinking about? But then it's like, if I say that, especially with all this stuff, do I even have less reason to be here? Like, do I even then have like completely less reason to be here? Would I then just even play like that whole game of like would I rather anyways? Just like, guys, like you're telling me that like that like life has an acceptable nature of this, but it's like impossible for me to go snowboarding or something. You know, that's all I'm saying. Like it's like there's like like life has an acceptable nature of this, like all this other stuff, but it's like impossible for me to like go skateboarding. You know, or even about like skydiving, even about all that, like skydiving and a whole host of other like river running and rock climbing. You know what I mean? Like, guys, like I'm just gonna say like, and I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna say like, why? like why? Like would I ever pick that over any of this other stuff? Like ever? Why would I ever pick that over any of this other stuff? If I know of any of this other stuff, ever, you know, or like being in a studio of some kind. Maybe the better way to say all this then is that if you just probably maybe the logical way, I'm just paralleling off of that or like doing some sort of like, you know, uh, I'm gonna I'll obviously reach a limitation with that logic as well, but like I'm gonna do some sort of Hand plant. I'm gonna do some hand plant off of a half pipe of the idea of like, you know, the emotion to that, and just say something to the extent of, okay, well, there's this idea of these things that like really all I'm gonna end up all I'm it's really gonna sound like, instead of it being like including of other persons, maybe is, you know, the missing whatever is that there are lots of choices. There are a lot of choices of things to do. There are a lot of choices of paths that you can take. You know, there's lots. Okay, there's a lot of choices. How you handle the fact that there are a lot of choices is up to you. There are a lot of decisions that you can make. Which means that you can go in a lot of different directions. Okay, now does everything relate back in the end after all of that? Well, that probably has to do with emotion. Right there. Have you considered emotion? You know, like, is what that probably has to deal with. Like, do all things relate back in the end? That probably is where emotion becomes considered. And although I would then say, okay, your ability to then relate is going to be based upon what kind of emotional state you're in to whatever it is that you're trying to relate to. All right? Okay? So that's probably the logical way to say that. The other way is just that if that's all that there is, or if that's all that this is, then there's probably a way where you don't know any of this. If I was to really consider things, there's probably a way where you don't know any of this. And that's the case. And you just don't know it. So then is it really a problem? And that's probably consideration. But then I would just say, like, obviously, I have ways of even dealing with that. Something that considers everything. You know, then I can say, like, who really considers more? Are you actually just inconsiderate? Which then at that point I've taken consideration to the place of where it's a movement towards things as well. But that's probably the best way to try and draw that whole scenario out without actually drawing, like, you know what I mean? Like something that everybody has to see or something like that. Who knows if anybody listened to this, who knows what they saw, man? You know? There's lots of ways that you could obviously basically understand enough of this or hear enough of this to and also be doing something a lot of other things. But there's probably an even more accelerated path to that. Which is sort of equating logic with emotion, perhaps, maybe, if I had to actually state my initial sort of guesstimation. It's probably the fact that I'm not setting up the paradigms and maybe just the way that creates the best arch. You know, if you're making some sort of like arch, obviously, if I'm talking about just like good and evil, if there's like good and there's evil, then that those words are probably that, you know, it look like it probably just look like that. Basically, you know, because and see the problem is now is that I've had that conversation. Okay, I think. And see, so then it's like the word doesn't necessarily have the kick that it did. Maybe I'm saying the exact same thing. And it's just the idea that it's like good is actually inconsiderate, but it's like that speed that is associated with it or whatever, right? Um and I can say evil is inconsiderate. Obviously I'm playing with the words there and I'm saying inconsiderate you know, like it's in consideration, okay? Which would probably be the much more appropriate way to say things if I was actually having a conversation with somebody rather than, you know, trying to basically just do this in some manner where it's like I'm obviously just like making these connections. But what? So good is like goodness is something that like was, you know, sort of in the beginning this thing that was right. See, this is how it probably has to be set up. Is like what? So goodness is in the beginning this thing that's like sort of right. Okay. And then what evil does evil have any idea or does it know even? Because can obviously something be a fault if it's set up to be like that. You know, see there's the whole dynamic right there. But you can almost even say like, you know, goodness at that point in time. And see, this goes back to a whole. I've just reduced this whole conversation of every conversation to just one conversation right here. But guess what? I grew up, you know. Um, People talked about this all the time. This was a constant. This conversation right here. Probably, I mean, this was all the time. This conversation, hearing these words, okay, hearing these words was a constant thing. Reducing it to that whole thing, I'm just like, okay, well then, if goodness, like, is like set up, you know, and goodness is at this place where it knows what good is, then it basically ignores everything else. So then it's inconsiderate. And I just say like, so then you can just play off those whole things like, does goodness even know consideration? You know, well, what is goodness? You know, and now instead of creating some form of arch between the two, it's just like now it's more of a wall for sure. Much more of a wall now. You know, but you can say that. You can say you can say something like that, and then um, like, well, if goodness was set up to be right, then is it like uh, does it even know? That's probably how you say that. Just like, does it even know? You know, and there's the whole idea of like earn and scale and uh, shade, amounts, kinds, types, aspects, levels, diameters, circumferences, surface areas. And then every complicated equation or idea is just going between those two things and trying to maintain some state. That's every topic in school. Probably right there. But anyways, then you say like, okay, well if that's all that it is, you know, or like just goodness Say anything. Probably. Does goodness say anything? You know? Time will afford these things. um, or maybe physics, or maybe the fire. uh, yeah, whatever you want to call any kind of math that you're doing, or any kind of science, or any kind of expression, is going to be bridging between all those shapes that I just described and trying to maintain some form of state. But anyways, then you just say like, okay, well, if that's all that it is, then maybe you just say, maybe we have to allow these things. You know? And then you say, that's just the way it is. But see, that's the other way. And that's counting on the bad. Okay. I did all this not recorded. It was like me, you know. And you just then maybe just say you have to allow those things. The idea then to say that like those things are allowed from the other probably perspective is if you then relate all those things um, with the idea of there being a choice to allowing those things. But then see, are you actually being bad or good if you have to make that decision? If you say like I'll allow it. You know what I mean? Like inherently, like what are you really? Like are you good? Can you handle like are you able to handle all of it? You know? Anyways, the idea of like being able to overcome anything is probably included in here somewhere. You know, and like if there really was actual real change, it probably would be pretty hard to say that it's anything other than what it is. Probably. You probably just look at it like that. Like I just said. I just said it like 20 seconds ago, but in a different way, and then repeated it in another way naturally that obviously shows something of my ability to, you know, come up with these things like on the spot over like 2 hours and keep it clean. If you're listening to this, I'm probably gonna, you know, stay away from you. Do I really need to say, like, whoever any of those other people were that I had conversations with? Then, if I just say that, like, who would really care? You know, who would really care about who those people are? You know what I mean? But obviously, there's like some sort of, you know, who knows what? Who knows why people are in certain places at certain times and have conversations with me about this stuff. Maybe it's not a good thing. Maybe it isn't. But yeah, if there really was actual change, probably would just Yeah, that's what it is. But see, then if it is, you'd be hard pressed to just not say that that is, something that is intrinsic to everything. I can avoid using any word that was whatever that should encapsulate any, whatever you perceive. That right there. What is realness then? You know what I mean? Well, if you don't know, then you probably don't know. Maybe that's realness for you. There's some quality that you can give goodness, basically. If you give goodness one more quality of some kind, then you like some one more form of awareness. If you give goodness one more form of awareness, then it has this ability to uh, give more allowances, basically. And that quality is something along the lines of you have to make bad. You have to make to do that. You have to make bad not bad, basically. If you really want to know, if you want to give goodness, the ability to make allowances, to be able to probably perceive that order in your reality, you probably have to make bad not bad, which would be something to the extent of um, like that's probably the way that you have to do that. Like you can if you can say some form of like what is badness but just work, probably is probably the best way to say that. It's like if badness is just like work, give you like some real world example. What does badness work? What is goodness like? You like it's there's no work. Well, why? You know what I mean? Well, it's just good. Right? So it's just like, if you just say that badness is just work, well, then you just say like, okay, well, there's obviously ways to enjoy things in this reality. Okay. There's obviously ways to enjoy things in this reality. And if badness is just work, then you say something like Probably like it's the best way to probably say that. Badness is just work. That it's like goodness is just good. Then um, you say something. Probably the one thing that I could probably say, it probably makes it all out, is just like as long as you make it work. Probably. You really want to know? That's all it is. Like, yeah. Trying to avoid repeating too many things here, you know? There's another condition as well. If you're like into like programming and whatever else. Instead of conditions, we obviously just gave certain things different qualities. But you could say something like, as long as that will, if that's all it is, you know, which is just like, well, what is all that it is? Is see, and then again, you have to make the condition like accepting of terms. Okay. Which is just like all life really is the ability like, are we being real? You know what I mean? Like, where's the separations of different things? Like, all life really is I've said some things before that I could probably throw in here to like show like some sense of like, oh yeah, there's like that's still there, you know? Is tricking yourself. then you better probably find some way to allow it. Like saying that if life is actually real, then to an extent it's like unknowable. Or if there are really only two spirits, And given all these things, there's certainly enough stuff out there that these things can do that shouldn't create problems if you think about it. Especially if there's only two spirits and one of them is just really good. And it probably does whatever it wants. What was the allowance for? Listen. You're trying to do something with some allowance. And when I've said this before, it's not even really containing much things that I think a lot of people would think about. You should probably figure out a way to make it work. I mean, what does somebody allow? Like I think the whole allowance in the original conversation was just almost like an extension of the idea that like there's more to life than just probably literally nothing. Like, you really want to know what the allowance probably in that conversation probably meant? It was probably much more of just like, there's more to life than nothing. This, like, literally, in that conversation, we had explained, like, good and evil and, like, the purposes of life to basically come to some place of, like, that's what everything is. And it was just like, okay, then the allowance is basically that life isn't just nothing, really. Which was just like, okay, now we've basically made 3 points. So Like really, I think that that's probably what it was. Is just like, yeah, if we want there to be more than just nothing, we probably better allow something. So is allowance ignorance then? Or are those two ignorant? Probably say that. Something about that. Because it's just saying, like, if we allow it, are we just ignoring it? Or without saying that, if we just say, like, good and bad, then are we saying, like, that's just ignoring everything else? Because we're just saying good and bad. That's probably it. Probably just simple wordplay. Really. That's probably all it was. Because like what? Am I gonna say something stupid? Like about what I think I'd allow people to do to me? Like how many hypotheticals are we gonna like get into this of just like, you know, before I just say like I'm gonna be on guard about everything. Before it's just like, you know, the allowance is a direction of like being somewhere so fleeting, basically, but it's the idea of being in a place that isn't yours for a very very long time if it goes to that place of where I actually do make sense of how you can add space into space. You'll just be in a space for a very, 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 very long time that is not your space. And at the end of the day, you'd probably just go back to the place like if it's, and see, we were comfortable with that right there. Is this all real? And there you go. There's like instant transmission for you. Are you comfortable or are you not? If you are, why would you try to make yourself uncomfortable? And if you are doing that, you better have a pretty good damn plan.